The following content includes spoilers for GTA Online and GTA 5 Story Mode. In November 2023, I discovered a new Easter egg in GTA Online, added in the San Andreas Mercenaries update. If you were tuned in during the Halloween 2023 weeks, you may remember that in the final stage of the UFO sightseeing event, which was active between October 28 and 31st, 14 UFOs were sighted in the sky over Los Santos County each night. Each UFO could abduct us, resulting first in a chance to wake up briefly in a secret underground facility situated under Fort Zancudo, in a room that serves as a morgue judging by the file names, and then in receiving the triple question mark t-shirt as a reward, in addition to the UFO boxer shorts from 2022, if it was the character's first abduction. The new triple question mark t-shirt features the encoded message, "One day will reveal all," along with 4 mysterious symbols around an alien face. By exploring the previously seen facility with mods, we could observe that the interior contains a hall with 4 rooms, each room associated with one of the symbols on the t-shirt. The symbol that appears first on both the t-shirt and in the base's hallway features a realistic sound waveform within a globe. This symbol is associated to the morgue where we would end up after being abducted by UFOs, and it also appeared on the monitors in this room, together with the encoded message, "We are watching." The question is, does this waveform actually represent a real sound? And if so, what sound? That's what we are going to find out in this video. Before we start, you should be aware that Rockstar Games' terms of service prohibit among other things the copying, decryption and reverse engineering of game files without explicit permission, and that YouTube's terms of service prohibit among other things accessing their service by automated means, as well as downloading and processing videos or audio other than as allowed by the service, without explicit permission. If any of what follows implies that I engaged in such despicable behavior, it shall be considered pure fiction. As several mystery hunters suggested, the waveform could be just a symbolic representation of sound, as a clue that we need to search for, or produce, a specific sound in the game, similar to the Easter egg that allows us to hunt the beast during a peyote hallucination in story mode. However, considering that the mysterious symbols from the nuclear launch facility introduced in 2017 in the Doomsday Heist update have been extensively analyzed on the Chiliad Mystery subreddit, including attempts to convert the waveform from the yellow mural into a sound or an image, the game developers were likely aware that the same would happen with the new symbols from the San Andreas Mercenaries update, so I doubted that they would have now given us a random irrelevant waveform, without even stylizing it a bit. As expected, the mystery hunting community did try various techniques in an attempt to convert the new image into a playable sound. The broad consensus though, and I cannot really disagree with them, was that it is not feasible. The most optimistic opinions were along the lines of, if John Lennon can be made to sing again, then this waveform must be possible to work out as well. The issue is that cleaning up the hum and other noise from a low-quality but totally playable recording, and isolating the a cappella from the instrumental accompaniment, as challenging as it may be, is different from having to generate out of nowhere the entire upper frequency spectrum of a sound of indeterminate duration, whose key information is embedded in the pixel shades of a raster image. Although audio super-resolution aka upsampling techniques can increase the sample rate of audio signals even by a factor of 6, they would not fit quite well with our use case, for the following reasons. Firstly, the input signal is expected to be provided through samples taken at equal time intervals, while in our case, each pixel column provides combined frequency and amplitude information associated with multiple samples from the corresponding time interval, for which no chronology is known. Secondly, the input signal is typically expected to already have a sample rate of at least 4 kHz. Even assuming we had a well-defined sample for each column, for our signal to have 4 kHz, its duration would need to be just a little over a tenth of a second. Perhaps the modern approach would have been image super-resolution, performing the training on a set of similar anti-aliased images of waveforms from various types of sounds. However, skepticism led me down a less ambitious path, brute force. Similar to NP-complete problems, while we do not have a feasible way to deduce a solution from the input, it is feasible to verify the correctness of a given potential solution. In our case, it is easy to visually inspect waveforms of iconic sounds that we would expect Rockstar to reference, and see if they resemble our waveform. Considering that it would have been unlikely for them to go through obtaining permissions just for such a small fragment from famous media like a movie or a song, not already used in their games or on their social media, I checked the audio of some videos from the Rockstar Games YouTube channel. Out of all the variety of music, special effects, and voice lines, this is what caught my attention.
Well, I've got 3 words for you. Crips Trading Company. Crips Trading Company.
That's because I noticed that the trade syllable from trading shares some common features with our sound. Going through the sounds of several cutscenes in GTA 5 also strengthened my belief that the sound we are looking for is a fragment of speech, most likely a word that begins with tro or cha. Could be tracked.
Are you ready to write the tract?
Could be trust.
Trust?
Trust.
Could be many others. By analyzing waveforms of such words more deeply, I got to see how those patterns that look like overlapping waves are actually formed. The signal is described by a nearly periodic function, its graph undergoing slight changes from one period to the next. If we could automatically identify fundamental quasi-periods accurately in any given audio file, at least where we can visually identify them, we could determine the maximum and minimum samples of each. Then, once adjusted to have the same sum of absolute values as the regular crests and troughs that we can distinguish in our waveform, we could calculate an approximation error, for example as the sum of squared differences, and retain the sequences that yield the lowest errors. It is important to note that in our waveform, even where the meridians of the globe obscure the peaks, or where it is ambiguous which local extrema would be chosen as peaks because the choices depend on the assumed starting positions of the quasi-periods, we can still tell how many peaks are unknown and ignore their counterparts from the audio file. To delimit the quasi-periods of the given signal, a straightforward greedy method would have been to step through its samples, and each time, from the current position, try all possible values of the next quasi-period, choosing the one that minimizes the difference compared to the previous segment of the same size, relative to its duration, with a strong bias toward fitting the samples with higher absolute values. The problem with this approach is that the quasi-period can vary across more than an order of magnitude, and we would often observe significant abrupt changes in the durations of successive identified quasi-periods, where the signal happens to change its graph shape too much, as well as non-fundamental quasi-periods winning the competition against fundamental ones, causing incorrect segmentations and comparisons. Instead, what I did was define an arbitrary number of subintervals depending on the desired precision, spanning the entire range of allowed quasi-periods, and for each of them, run an independent segmentation on a different thread, trying quasi-period values only from the subinterval in question. The subinterval definitions take into account the maximum possible ratio between any two distinguishable quasi-periods of the GTA waveform, and stipulate that the lower and upper endpoints respectively form two geometric progressions with the same common ratio. Thus, while the order of magnitude has the same variation within each subinterval, it is also guaranteed that no matter what the quasi-period range of the actual solution is, one of our intervals will include it. It is true that most segmentations will thus be forced to be incorrect because they rely on false premises. Nevertheless, a match resulting from an incorrect segmentation could never compete with the correct solution. The chance of the former having a smaller error, that is, random samples just happening to coincide with all the fluctuations of our peaks, is astronomically small. This is all the data that I used as input from the GTA waveform, together with the information that the ratio between any two quasi-periods cannot be greater than 2. The high-frequency part at the beginning was ignored completely. In case you are wondering, I did have the curiosity to ask some of the popular free-to-use AI chatbots, both to separately implement the segmentation of an audio signal into its fundamental quasi-periods, with the aim of receiving something more precise than my method, and also to suggest a solution for the overall problem of detecting in this signal any occurrences of a waveform given through its crests and troughs, with the aim of getting them to work around the limitations of a segmentation method assumed to be inaccurate, in the style of my approach of processing subintervals of possible quasi-period lengths separately. However, regardless of what this black magic will be capable of in the upcoming period, at the time I checked it was still far from providing meaningful and functional solutions to these problems. So I went ahead and implemented the previously described method. Then, by testing the program for other waveforms given by me as sequences of crests and troughs extracted manually from Audacity screenshots, I confirmed that it was able to identify them accurately, and I estimated that the approximation error in the case of a correct match would be unlikely to exceed 3000, which is basically measured relative to the resolution of the original texture with our symbol. My first attempt was to run it on the sounds used in Rockstar's YouTube videos. Unfortunately, the best match found resulted in an error above 5000, far from having a chance to qualify as a solution.
Gotta live! Oh! See ya!
Nor did I have any more luck with other channels, whether related to GTA or not, so I moved on to the second option, sounds from games. Several users suggested that the sound may be in GTA 5 or online. Although I agreed that this was the default option, I rather expected it to be found in another GTA title or even in a game from another Rockstar Games series. In GTA 5 and online, there are multiple references to famous quotes from older titles, even including 2 encoded messages, "Hey, you never call, how'd you fancy going?" from GTA 4, and
All we had to do was follow the damn train, CJ.
from GTA San Andreas. And when it comes to crossovers with different game series, while no such encoded messages are known to exist, plain references are plentiful, such as the Nazar Speaks arcade minigame with references to the Red Dead series, or the Camheads arcade minigame with references to the Manhunt series. The expectation of a high difficulty could also be justified by the existence of some famous Easter eggs which, in order to be found legitimately, and not by hackers looking at the scripts as it actually happened, would have realistically required the collaboration of thousands of fully committed and well-organized mystery hunters. For these reasons, to me GTA 5 seemed too obvious for our sound to be in there.
It's Russians. We know it's Russians. This attack is one of their signature moves.
That's the whole point, Mrs. Rackman. It's meant to look like Russians. We think it's not Russians because that would be too easy.
For simplicity, I decided to start with the original editions of GTA 3 and Vice City, as their audio files are easier to manage, they take up much less space, and their formats are well documented on the GTA Mods wiki, making it easy to write programs that export them all as WAV files. But once again, the results were negative.
See it. Thor. Who are you? Who? Yeah.
No!
God.
Be where I am to. Now, Clifford says that there's a 99% probability it is some Russians.
Whether it was too obvious or just obvious, GTA 5 had to be the next priority. Similar to other newer games from Rockstar, in GTA 5, non-procedurally generated sounds are packed into audio wave container files. Although the OpenIV modding tool does provide support to save all tracks from multiple or even from all AWCs as WAV files automatically, all the extracted files would collectively take up around 154 gigabytes of disk space, a number that I actually expected to be much higher at that time. As I didn't have enough free space even on secondary storage, let alone on a small RAM disk as it would have been preferable in this scenario, the process would have required my periodic intervention to manually extract tracks from chunks of the AWC files list. The CodeWalker modding tool, on the other hand, does not provide a feature for the automatic saving of tracks from multiple AWC files out of the box. However, it is open source, so I was able to modify the raw file extraction option to save AWC contents as separate WAV or MIDI files. Similar to the producer-consumer problem, I set CodeWalker to temporarily suspend the extraction whenever there was too little disk space left, while my waveform identification script was crunching the WAV files and cumulating the best matches. Sticking to the same precision used in testing, the total processing time for the GTA 5 files was estimated to be around 40 to 50 hours. As the hours were passing by, I used to check the partial results from time to time, only to be disappointed by errors that were far too large to indicate an acceptable solution. On November 26th, after nearly 36 hours of the program running, I woke up at around 7 in the morning, and the second my eyes opened I went to check the status, only to see a 429 error. And even though this might sound like a 404 not found error, in my case the meaning was the opposite. For an approximation error like this or smaller to be a false positive, about 200 trillion terabytes of WAV files would be needed on average, and processing them with my setup would require about 8 trillion years. After all the testing I had done, could this be a bug? When you are a mystery hunter, nothing can be more frustrating than feeling so close to the white rabbit that you can almost touch it, only to see it slowly fall apart in what turns out to be just a bug.
It was just a bunny.
I immediately checked the corresponding soundtrack and visually confirmed. The waveforms did look identical, and this is how the track sounds.
Mount Chiliad, Mount Chiliad, Mount Chiliad.
This voice line of story protagonist Michael DeSanta saying Mount Chiliad turned out to be found in 2 different audio files of the game, with different sample rates and slightly different waveforms, but the differences are not noticeable when listening to it. The file that seems to contain the exact original sound from which the image was obtained is used in the game when we take a taxicab playing as Michael and select a destination in the Mount Chiliad neighborhood.
Where can I take you?
Mount Chiliad.
Right away, sir.
The other sound will play in the getaway vehicle setup missions for the Blitz play and the Bureau raid heists if Michael places the vehicle in the said region. Because we are normally not allowed to leave the getaway vehicle in the Mount Chiliad zone, we actually have to get the game to confirm the location as suitable while standing in a neighboring zone at the boundary, and then announce the location quickly after entering the Mount Chiliad area.
Hey, Les, that getaway car's parked where we need it.
All right, give me the location.
Mount Chiliad.
Good work. Call me when the rest of the prep's taken care of, okay?
I am not sure why the game stores all the location sounds twice instead of reusing them between these two types of scenarios, but the reason is likely related to the fact that the dialogues in the getaway vehicle missions support subtitles and translations, while the dialogue with the taxi driver does not. Apparently, there are restrictions or conventions which require that soundtracks with associated written text undergo certain audio processing and be named in a form that includes a sequence of 4 letters. Although technically the taxi service script can be modified in order to also use the location sounds which have associated text, this would require either the base names of the tracks with all the 4-letter codes to be hard-coded, or the translation file to be loaded only to get the track base names, without using the written versions, or even worse, subtitles to be inconsistently used only for the protagonist's destination line and not for the taxi driver's lines. All these approaches might be discouraged by internal practices, and ultimately it might be considered that the dialogue lines which belong to both translated and untranslated conversations are too few to justify an optimization, possibly taking up even less space than the unused ones which sometimes get delivered to players. Another thing worth noting is that the waveform in our symbol only depicts the word Chiliad, without mount, possibly for a sexier appearance. In hindsight, since the sound ended up lasting only half a second, image super-resolution methods with the state-of-the-art factor of 4x may have actually worked to achieve a reconstruction at a sample rate of nearly 4 kHz, at which speech is still intelligible despite being below the Nyquist rate for reliable speech communication, possibly allowing us to recognize more sounds or even the entire word Chiliad.
Mount Chiliad.
Dear viewers, the real shit ends here. Thanks for watching. Here starts the bullshit. Now, you can call me a wild goose chaser, or an ego chaser. That would be so sweet. But at the time of finding the solution, I considered the possibility that it might be a hint to an older mystery related to Mount Chiliad that the developers previously seemed to suggest was waiting to be solved.
I feel web, still tangled after years of unraveling. Will you be the one? I wonder.
The Spanish in-game translation of this fortune that we can get from Madame Nazar in online explicitly says spiderweb instead of just web, while the French one explicitly says, will you manage to solve the mystery? Needless to say, if untangling the so-called web had involved unlocking any never-before-seen content, in order for that to remain undiscovered until now, it would have been expected to be protected against reverse engineering, at least by using some elaborate techniques of security through obscurity, designed with the aim of making history in terms of how long an Easter egg has ever stayed hidden in a video game. Traditionally, Franklin is seen as the central protagonist of the story, as he is the only one guaranteed to survive in the end. Therefore, the non-default choice of Michael for the Chiliad voice line could have highlighted him as the character to play as, all the more so considering 2 other potential hints. Firstly, the digits 003 in the corner of the screen where the waveform appears are also found on Michael's license plate after his initials. Secondly, one of Michael's most iconic lines, which plays a significant role in the story as it determines Trevor's return, sounds like this.
You forget 1,000 things every day, pal. Make sure this is one of them.
And 1,000 things is the definition of the word Chiliad, which has the same spelling as Chiliad. However, in December 2023, the GTA 5 and online source code from mid-2022 leaked publicly, and no such unresolved mystery has been reported to exist, despite there being numerous hackers interested in exploring unknown or cut content like cancelled DLCs or old versions of revised missions. All we got in the guise of unknown Easter eggs were some strange or outdated comments, like this audio equipment here being incorrectly marked as a 100% completion Easter egg, or this car spawn location inside Fort Zancudo being curiously marked as Army Base Secret Alien Laboratory, or the rare triple question mark tattoo being marked as Chiliad Mystery. Consequently, with the possible exception of the online jobs that retrieve their data from cloud files, it is reasonable to assume that at this point there is no more undiscovered secret content that can be unlocked in the game, unless you are into really far-fetched theories, such as the leakers deliberately removing the mystery code for mysterious reasons, or Rockstar keeping it in a separate ultra-secure repository, or the developers having added an extra layer of obscurity by sneaking the mystery into their own codebase so that the uninitiated outsiders wouldn't notice it, maybe even implementing it in unexpected places like the script compiler and so on. To me personally, Rockstar does not really seem to have that degree of foresight. Therefore, sticking to the hypothesis that the symbol is about Michael, it most likely foreshadows Michael's long-awaited return in a future online DLC, presumably with aliens, similar to how Dr. Dre's cameo appearance in the Cayo Perico heist update in 2020 foreshadowed his return as the main character in the VIP contract 1 year later. Besides the waveform symbol, there is another subtle reason to expect a return of Michael in GTA Online. This one is related to the fact that Michael has been an associate producer at Richards Majestic Productions, Solomon Richards Movie Studio, a position that he was implied to still hold in 2021, in the contract update.
Man, shit, I know one of the producers around here. I hope his ass ain't at work today.
And in 2024, in the bottom dollar bounties update.
I love calling you sugar tits, because you're fat like a tit, and bad for people like sugar.
Specifically, it's about a possible hint that Richards Majestic Productions could be collaborating with the government on alien-related studies. The existence of a secret UAP retrieval program called Majestic, mentioned last year on a blueprint from a Merryweather security base.
Damn, man. This is some alien-type shit. I wouldn't be surprised if those UFO sightings around the city have just been Merryweather fucking around with this bullshit. We can sell this easy. I'll get you a cut.
The name of this government program wouldn't be the only one-word reference to Solomon's studio. There is also an achievement named Majestic that can be unlocked using the Rockstar Editor or Director mode. It is already known that Richards Majestic Productions holds suspiciously accurate knowledge about the appearance of real in-game aliens, as the frozen alien body that can be found in North Yankton, as well as the aliens that spawn in the secret bunker resupply job in Online, looks similar to the alien costumes worn by actors inside the studios and the space interloper outfit that we receive from Solomon in Online for recovering his stolen movie props. Even one of the movie props is a bust of a member of the same xenomorph-like species. Moreover, the previously mentioned quote of Michael about forgetting 1,000 things, which could still contain a hidden reference to Mount Chiliad, was implied to originate from a movie produced by Richards Majestic Productions.
We forget 1,000 things every day. Can't we just make this one of them?
Arthur Penny's Sanatorium.
While Michael's relevance for the waveform symbol is still not certain, because after all they just picked one of the three protagonists of the story, the word Chiliad itself cannot be random. But how exactly is the Fort Zancudo underground laboratory connected to Mount Chiliad? Well, the most prominent thing they have in common is their connection to UFO sightings. Mount Chiliad, whose lore may take inspiration from the myths surrounding real-world Mount Shasta, has been at the center of fans' conspiracy theories mostly due to some controversial UFO-themed drawings that can be found in the cable car station and on the sides of the mountain. These drawings were presumably made by hippies in order to expose an apparently holographic UFO that can be seen above the mountain in story mode under specific conditions after completing the game. This UFO features the FIB logo, which means it is likely related to the UAP retrieval program Majestic that I mentioned earlier. Mount Chiliad, more precisely the bridge at the end of Old Man's Crack, is also where we wake up in GTA Online when we receive the rare triple question mark tattoo shown earlier, experiencing a close encounter of the second kind. The model of this UFO does not feature any visible logo, so it's not excluded that it could have extraterrestrial origins. Furthermore, the sightseeing Halloween event, even before the Zancudo underground facility was added to the game, gave us a double confirmation of the importance of Mount Chiliad in relation to the UFOs. Firstly, one of the UFOs we need to photograph spawns atop the mountain, right above the cable car station, but not in the final stage of the event, so it is not one of those that can currently take us to the Zancudo morgue. Secondly, one of the locations where we can respawn after being abducted in the last stage is in front of the mural inside the station. Whether the Halloween UFOs are owned by humans or aliens is debatable. You can read more about their possible nature in this Reddit post of mine, which no less than 5 people found interesting. Apart from the UFOs that we can witness on Mount Chiliad and the possibility that we wake up in front of the mural after being abducted, there are several connections that can be made at a symbolic level between the new laboratory and the Chiliad mural or the Chiliad nuclear launch facility added in the Doomsday Heist DLC. In the Zancudo laboratory we can find blueprints with the jetpack from GTA San Andreas, an alien egg, as well as crates with an eye symbol similar to those depicted in the Chiliad mural and glyphs. Other crates feature the eye-shaped logo of the Clifford AI neural network, whose data used to be stored on the servers at the silo beneath Mount Chiliad. Moreover, 3 of the symbols associated with the rooms of the Zancudo lab resemble symbols found in the murals and on the doors of the Chiliad Missile Base's laboratory area. Ultimately, apart from close encounters and symbols, in the LSA Operation Surgical Strike, we have confirmation that characters are also aware that the activity conducted at Fort Zancudo can be somehow linked to Mount Chiliad. In this mission, which was added last year in the same DLC as the Zancudo facility, we can get an optional objective of stealing a mysterious artifact from Merryweather Security, and this is how our instructions sound.
So TL, you ever heard the rumors about what they're doing up at Fort Zancudo? I'm talking Mount Chiliad style shit, man. What if Merryweather knows something about that? If you see any evidence of that kind of thing, grab it. We'll name our price.
And the sought evidence turns out to be nothing else than the jar of green goo that originally appeared in GTA San Andreas and was implied to be related to aliens. Although Mount Chiliad seems to have an undeniable involvement, it is not mandatory that our waveform symbol alludes to this part of the lore, especially considering that it's unclear why Mount Chiliad would be representative of the morgue in particular. So it is still possible that the symbol had been meant to represent nothing more than the general idea of sound, and that the developers decided to add an extra meaning to it just as a funny detail, with more or less subtle connotations. In fact, the source code leak mentioned earlier has revealed the existence of some internal DLLs and DLL injection tools, whose names allude to drug injection as well as the Chiliad mystery. Thus, alongside projects named Black Tar, Crocodile, and Syringe, there is also a tool named Chiliad Generator, a library called Red Herring, and an empty assembly file called Egg. This indicates that Chiliad is likely an inside joke within Rockstar, mocking the player's decade-long belief in a solvable mystery that never actually existed.
Know anything about the eggs on Mount Chiliad?
Lab rat, this is our new friend, Fresh Meat. Doesn't seem to know much about the eggs on
Mount Chiliad. So what do you recommend we give as a first dose into the fucking truth, man? Me first, of course.
Okay, well, as your physician, let's see, I recommend a baseline of cocaine. And then 5 big hits off of the pen.
Only guy who can get a breakthrough DMT dose in a vape.
And then some of the new phenethylamine my assistant's been working on to get your oxytocin levels right. And we'll finish with a little something I like to call snake sweat. Half mescaline, half scopolamine. Now that'll take you the rest of the way!
Yeah! Perfect. Dosage?
Well, as your physician under the circumstances, I recommend a lot!
Hey, speaking of meth, remember when I asked you about the eggs on Chiliad? One day we should fly up there and take a look. I mean, I never seen nothing, but you read enough shit on the web, there's gotta be something there. On this timeline or the next one, my friend.
GTA, we gotta talk. Alternatively, the choice of the word Chiliad could also be based on difficulty considerations, with the developers possibly saying, if we are going to add such a hard-to-find Easter egg, let's at least hide the most easily guessable sound, the very word that is under mystery hunters' noses whenever they visit the Chiliad mystery subreddit, so they would find it by just checking the Mount Chiliad voice lines. The mention of Mount Chiliad in the mission Surgical Strike, in association with the activity carried out at Fort Zancudo, could have also been a clue to help us find the solution.
I'm talking Mount Chiliad style shit, man.
Reddit user Retsi_GGE on the other hand suggests that the globe could represent the internet, and since the symbol appears alongside the encoded message we are watching, the meaning could be that the developers are lurking the Chiliad mystery community on the internet. I actually like this interpretation to the point that I believe the waveform in a globe symbol should become the new icon of the Chiliad mystery subreddit, assuming that this will remain the de facto place for GTA mysteries going forward. The eye symbol from the Chiliad mural didn't turn out to represent anything more than the Chiliad UFO from single player anyway, and regardless of how Rockstar is planning to reinvent it, at the moment it's quite overrated, also being used in the logos of Codewalker and the Game File Gurus. Last but not least, Redditors pointed out that Chiliad was a real-life private American company with the motto, connecting all the dots. This motto is similar to the encoded message, connect the lines, displayed on the screen of a laptop model which was added to the game files in 2023 together with the laboratory, and will be used in the game during the 2024 Halloween event. Chiliad developed software for virtual aggregation of big data across organizations or departments, allowing efficient search and change monitoring. Their customers included U.S. intelligence agencies that house some of the largest data collections and communications networks in the federal government. The company filed for bankruptcy in 2014 and their technology was incorporated into the Moho software, developed by big data firm Tectonic Insight. Chiliad was targeted by conspiracy theories, mainly because its co-founder and former CEO Christine Maxwell can be linked to some prominent and disgraced figures, alleged to have had connections with the Israeli intelligence service Mossad, her late father Robert Maxwell, her sister Ghislaine Maxwell, and Ghislaine's late partner Jeffrey Epstein. Christine in particular was speculated to be tied to foreign intelligence as she was the leader of Information on Demand. 2 years after she had purchased this data broker company and 1 year before she assumed the role of president and CEO, Information on Demand was investigated by the FBI under Classification 105, Foreign Counterintelligence. It is thus possible that the Chiliad symbol, along with the encoded messages we are watching and connect the lines, suggests the existence of a fictional counterpart of the Chiliad company in the GTA universe, where conspiracy theories are often materialized. We can expect this fictional company to turn out to be tied to foreign intelligence, or to have a direct involvement in the UFO abductions as part of a conspiracy inspired by Project Blue Beam. Despite the fact that the significance of the waveform symbol couldn't have possibly been more ambiguous, I gotta say that the experience of finding the sound felt quite rewarding after all, and I would love to see more challenges like this. Players are sometimes criticized for the greed with which they always expect an Easter egg to lead to more Easter eggs instead of appreciating what they are given, but in fact, this is not about being dissatisfied with the Easter egg you received. It is rather about being dissatisfied with how easily the Easter egg was to find, whether you found it legitimately aka as intended, or through what could be considered cheating. All I want is to work for my Easter egg, and to work hard, instead of getting it for free. I hope I'm not asking for too much. After 1 year in which the secret Fort Zancudo facility interior except for the morgue was only accessible with hacks, on June 25, Rockstar released the Bottom Dollar Bounties update, including drip feed content for Halloween 2024, which for the first time will allow us to free roam inside the base legitimately. This time, after waking up on our slab, we will be able to pick up a crowbar from one of the 2 file cabinets in the morgue, or from one of the crates in the room with the mirrored maze symbol, and use it to open a crate where we will find either the new Shocker melee weapon if we haven't collected it before, or 1,000 RP and some cash, either 25,000 or 2,000 GTA dollars, if the Shocker had been already unlocked. The Shocker, or Stun Rod as it is named in the game files, is a baton that also induces a shock effect on the victim, similar to the stun gun. From the moment we wake up on the slab, we will have a hidden 10-minute timer to open the elevator doors and get out. For this, we will need to pull all the 4 levers in the hallway, in an order that is determined by the numbers of occurrences of each of the 4 symbols on specific objects inside its associated room, which are guaranteed to always form the set 1, 2, 3, 4. For example, if only 3 monitors in the morgue are on and thus the globe symbol appears 3 times on the screens, it means that the lever beneath the globe symbol must be pulled 3rd. If we get the lever order wrong 3 times or the time runs out, a toxic gas will be released, which if we still don't make it out in the final stretch assuming the time expired scenario, will quickly render our character unconscious and we will wake up in one of the locations from the previous years. If on the other hand we succeed, we will receive $25,000, I mean in GTA, and 1,000 RP, and we will find ourselves in front of the bunker's elevator at level -1. Although the entrance to this vestibule normally cannot be crossed in either direction without instantly receiving a 4-star wanted level, even if we own a hangar at Fort Zancudo, the Bottom Dollar Bounties update disables this restriction for the first time, but only as long as the Halloween weather tunable is on, as it will be when the UFO abductions will be live. However, if you don't have a hangar at Fort Zancudo, by exiting the vestibule you will trespass into the restricted area of the fort, so be prepared for some serious heat, unless you are willing to give Uncle Lester a small portion of your reward in exchange for the Cops Turn Blind Eye service.
What do you need exactly? Done.
Since none of the hidden messages from the San Andreas Mercenaries update are thus necessary to solve this upcoming escape challenge, they remain a mystery at this time. Moreover, in the summer update, our facility also got a new announcer voice that can be periodically heard broadcasting through the speakers, and suspiciously enough, the sounds are unintelligible and contain portions that repeat irregularly, possibly using a code to hide new secret messages. While While it is totally possible that these sounds being distorted is just an immersion element, like the fact that we wake up with low health and blurry vision, I wouldn't ignore the fact that we are talking about sounds that are emitted right next to the morgue, aka the room that has a soundwave symbol to potentially highlight their importance, or that this whole place has already been the source of 4 hidden messages, or that by this time the developers should have been more than aware that with or without Easter eggs, we would analyze these sounds anyway. A possible optimistic explanation for all these messages is that they might be prepared for a future version of the UFO sightseeing event, which has been developed incrementally from year to year since 2021, and could be assigned a role for Halloween 2025 or later. In fact, since the Clifford story remained open-ended, with the last copy of its data being kept by the IAA instead of being destroyed, we should expect a conclusion anyway, rather than our abduction and escape being the final episode of this lore.
Okay, that should be it. Whatever was left of Clifford is gone forever, except for the backup on your phone. Which, by the way, is now the single most dangerous and valuable hard drive on the planet. Bring it back here, promptly. Now we're on the home stretch. I'm sure you're wondering why the agency has decided to make that final backup copy of the Clifford data. You'll recall our objective, to prevent the Clifford data falling into the wrong hands. Well, these, my friend, are very much the right hands. With this at our disposal, we'll be in a position to readjust the price of gas without resorting to the old playbook of assassinations, false flags, and rigged elections. Even this old agency's gotta move with the times. You see? All for the greater good.
A pessimistic explanation on the other hand is that Rockstar might be adding these messages maliciously as red herrings to subtly get revenge on those who access the game files unauthorizedly, making the most dedicated of us look like clowns as we end up wasting considerable time on irrelevant subjects, like the one in my dumb video. However, considering that in 2015 and 2016, Rockstar added legitimate clues as unused strings in the code, in order to guide players to find the Beast Fight Easter egg, it is also possible that the encoded messages released in 2023 along with the base, are clues towards an already existing rare Easter egg, carefully hidden in the code, which no one has triggered yet, such as a secret alternative way into the facility outside of the Halloween event. Remember that the facility was added after the 2022 source code leaks. Therefore, if next time you go hiking on Mount Chiliad with your buddies, you suddenly find yourself kidnapped and taken to this place, you might be the first to meet the unknown requirements and find the secret way in. Make sure you always play with a functional screen recording setup in place, and have your red button ready just as our responsible world leaders have theirs. Your video recording wouldn't really serve as proof, because those mischievous modders can be up to no good and fake such footage, but at least it could help you or others determine the necessary conditions to reproduce it, as a picture is worth 1,000 words. While you are in there, don't forget to try the door to that precious gooey watermelon, and if you have access, to take it as a souvenir, which is already a tradition. Nevertheless, considering that the recent switch to a serious kernel-level anti-cheat has not completely deterred hackers from looking for vulnerabilities, and that in January 2023 we were able to witness remote script execution exploits in GTA Online, if any of this happens on PC, don't get delusional, it's still more likely to be just a hack.